Welcome back to TM Nerdy. I am the Mystic TM. Happy new comic book day, everyone. Happy Whiplash Wednesday. That's right, guys. It is Whiplash Wednesday with the PCP Army Bad Batch. Earlier, before this show, it was the hashtag Blame Fable show on Instagram. The link is down below. I'll get to the rest of what's coming up on Whiplash Wednesday. But right now, we're on Chatting with the Comic Community, episode 18. And I have a special guest today. Not only is he a comic enthusiast, not only is he pretty cool, and he does pick up a lot of great comics, but he is a fellow Canadian. That's right, guys. Give a hearty station to the comic vet.
Station, my man, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure. Should we start with singing "O Canada" or would that offend too many? But yeah, that's great. Thanks for having me, man. This is really cool. I appreciate it.
Oh, I'm just happy to have a fellow Canadian. Like, I'm finding more and more Canadians in the comic community through these platforms, and it's great. Like Actual Dracula, yourself, Nerdy Couch, just to name a few.
Yep.
So for the viewers at home, I just want you to tell them a little bit about yourself. I'm going to big screen you now.
Sure. There's no subject I love more than just talking about me. My name is Chris. My handle is the Comic Vet. I'm in my mid-40s. I've been a comic book reader since I was probably 7 or 8. I'm a second-generation comic reader, but I like to say I'm a first-generation comic collector. My dad did read comics in the 50s and the 60s. He was mostly into American Westerns and a lot of historical type of comic books. When I discovered comic books, both my parents were very supportive of it. They bought me a lot of the comic books that were geared towards children, like Archie, Richie Rich, Casper, those kind of like Gold Key books. It was a little bit later that I discovered that not only were Saturday morning cartoon characters in comic books, but the Saturday morning cartoon characters that were superhero, like the Amazing Spider-Man or Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and the DC superheroes and what they were doing, that they were in comic books too. So it was about that point when I saw Christopher Reeve's Superman movie, and I knew that I was addicted to the whole superhero genre, and it never left me all through my years. If there was a comic book movie that was out there, I went and saw it, whether it was like total cheese or something that was a blockbuster, like the 2 Fantastic Four movies that weren't that good, or the Blade trilogy that I actually thought was surprisingly very good. That doesn't have that for whatever reason doesn't carry
Blade
a lot of weight
trilogy?
right now. Yes.
No, I'm pretty sure there's only 2 Blade movies.
3, my man. The third one stars our fellow Canadian Ryan Reynolds. Check it out.
Oh yeah, we don't consider that one a movie.
Savage. But yeah, it's comic books have always been a part of my life, whether they were at the forefront in my teen years and where they are today, or whether they were kind of on the back burner when I was, being a father and help raising my son. Comic books have always been a part of my life, whether I was in and out for just a short amount of time in my 20s, 30s. I remember when Marvel killed off Spider-Man. That was big news. And then once I investigated it a little bit, I found out that it was just the Ultimate Universe Spider-Man. It wasn't actually, Earth 616 Peter Parker. And that helped actually draw me back into specifically what Marvel was doing at the time. I was paying attention to a lot of what DC was doing, because at the time DC was doing, and still is, pardon me, a lot of fantastic animated movies, and that's something that my son enjoyed, so I would sit down and watch it with him. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. Like, comic books have always been a part of my life, and something that my father passed down to me, just the reading aspect of it. and it's something that I've tried to pass down to my own son, and that is the reading aspect of it, plus the fact that some of these things could potentially have some value later on down the road.
So like from my understanding, you got started because of like the animation, like Spider-Man, like, and you're not talking about like the '90s Spider-Man. You're talking
No, no,
about
no. Yeah. So being a child of the 70s, growing up, I got to see a lot of the reruns of the 60s Spider-Man that came out. And in the early 80s, it was rebooted again with Spider-Man and his amazing friends. And the two other characters were Firestar and Iceman of the X-Men. And I remember Stan Lee used to do the intro narration to that particular series, and it's by starting to read Marvel comics at the time, I got to realize who Stan Lee actually was. And so yeah, that for me, it's always been two. It's always been Spider-Man, and it's always been Superman. Just because Superman was the first uh, live action movie of a superhero that I got to see. I just fell in love with the character, and he's just a good guy, man. Like I get that, a lot of people have a bad rap about Superman, but you know, it's it, it just shows that sometimes for me reading Superman or seeing Superman on the big screen, it gives you a little bit of hope, and that you can strive for greatness, and this is what sometimes greatness looks like.
yeah, and that's probably like the first time seeing that. Like you were probably young when you saw it, like,
Hmm.
and so that's the first time you ever felt that feeling of hope and stuff. So you always feel that it's that nostalgia always creeping back up on you, saying like, you know what, this is the first time you felt that hope, that feeling was seeing Superman on the screen.
Right. It was, and that entire movie was beautifully cast. I gotta admit, like I can't picture anyone other than Christopher Reeve as our modern, or pardon me, my modern Superman. Not to take anything away from Henry Cavill, who I think is fantastic as Superman as well. It's just it was a good script. It played out well, even though I feel the sequel was almost better than the original. Um, it's just, as a kid, you seeing someone fly on the screen, and to have Margot Kidder as Lois Lane, who was a little bit of a tough girl that wasn't necessarily going to be pushed around a little bit, and also another strong Canadian. Rest in peace, Margot Kidder. But yeah, on the big screen for me it was Superman. On the little screen it was Spider-Man, and there was other stuff that was sprinkled in here and there. Star Wars was a part of my childhood too, growing up. You know, uh, I fell in love with the Luke Skywalker character. I have a lot of respect for Mark Hamill. I got to meet the guy a few years back and shake his hand, and I got a little choked up when I got to meet him. And it's exactly what you said is exactly right. The nostalgia factor doesn't go away. And a lot of these, I'm finding at least, a lot of the stuff that drew me into pulp culture at a very, very early age, like 4, 5, 6, and 7, a lot of that stuff seems to be able to stand the test of time. The first Superman movie and its sequel seems to still resonate with a lot of people, and people of your generation as well. Watching YouTube, everyone seems to say, "Oh, I have a lot of respect for those movies and what Christopher Reeve did." And those late '60s Spider-Man cartoons, although they're a little campy at times or whatever, everyone seems to remember like how the song at the introduction of the cartoon goes. That's timeless. Even the Ramones did a cover of it. So it just goes to show that the stuff that lured me in, I feel it lured in an entire generation and continues to bring people together through pop culture.
Yeah, I do agree. And like speaking of like bringing people together, like through this community, we've been able to reach out with people and like meet people we've never thought like give it like I've met Dave's Dungeon, Arcade Pop,
Yeah.
V Across the Universe, like just to
Hmm.
name a few, HK Wifey, that Sheena Station, like
Yeah.
you. Uh, I want to ask, like, how do you do another show that's two cool dudes, two hot picks with
Hmm.
Mark from Legion of Comics? I really
Hmm.
want to find out how you guys met.
So when when I started, I like to call it my journey, my YouTube journey, because I really had cold feet. Like I think it was last August, And so I think I'm probably getting close to a year. Anyways, it was last August when I started, and once I decided to actually start showing my face on on my channel, because I used to just show the books I would pick up or an unboxing of something I ordered in, and once I decided to, go on this side of my phone, uh, Mark somehow found my channel. I'm not sure if it was like he was pointed in my direction from like Slotted Up 503 was really key in the beginning of my channel. Like he was one of the first people to spotlight my channel and mention it on his own. And that really blew my mind, Travis, because I used to think that we were all kind of against each other. Like we were fighting for views, like, never mind what's going on over here. Take a look at what I'm doing. But I was so wrong. And I've said that over and over again. I was so, so wrong. This is a community that embraces each other. It doesn't matter white, black, whatever your creed is, from wherever you are in, around the world. Everyone just kind of comes together and we like to talk about pop culture, specifically what we do, comic books. And it's at that point where Mark would watch my channel or watch my video, and as it was playing out, he would leave messages in real time. So if I was doing a new comic book day pickup and I would have, say, 8 books, he would make 8 comments about these books, and then in turn, I started following him and saw that he was a part of this much larger community as well, basically hosted by the Burke family channel. So he was a part of that family, and I would do the same for him. And then I realized that that's actually a nice thing. So I would start doing it to other channels that I was enjoying. If they were doing an unboxing of 3 or 4 different books, I would just post in real time, even though it was a video and not a live stream. So each book, I would say something like, "I've read that," or "That's fantastic artwork," or I didn't know that that person was an artist, and now thanks for turning me on to that artist." And and it's through that point Mark started reaching out to me saying, "I'd like you to come on my channel to talk about comics." Well, that was just too much for me. Like, no, I'm not ready for that. I'm just right now, I'm still just doing stuff inside my car. I was very nervous, very hesitant. Like, how am I going to come across? How, like, can I carry a conversation with someone when it comes to comic books? Am I going to come across as not knowing anything, or am I going to be coming across as someone that's just throwing too much at somebody, you know? And in the end, again, like I mentioned earlier, I was wrong because when I decided to pull the trigger and join someone on their channel, and what I quickly realized was most of everyone, including yourself, there's just a natural chemistry when it comes to comic books. A lot of time I find is someone would be talking about a comic book I never heard of, but I found it incredibly interesting. And as soon as they would say one of the creators' name, it would set up that spark. Oh, I know that. I know that writer or that artist from this, and then it would lead a segue into, well, I'm glad that you spoke about that book because I've read this a little while ago by that writer, and I thought it was fantastic. And then in turn, that would open up a new conversation. And it was through that point where Mark just invited me to come back on his channel Sunday nights for At Week's End, and it's just been something that's been fluid ever since the first time I popped on that show with him. I don't think I've missed one since. And now it's to the point, myself and Mark and Ryan from the Cosmic Campfire, collectively, if one of us is going to be late, we actually just stall the program a little bit if we have to, because we don't want to do it without each other, because the chemistry is just, we find so, so good. And it's gotten to the point where we're talking to each other, via messaging, just about our lives in general, talking about car problems, family, illness, the whole 9 yards. And it's through this community that I got to discover these cool guys. And and it's after going on Mark's channel for a few months, something that I've always wanted to do was just talk about or just highlight one book that's coming up for New Comic Book Day. And I know that Mark is someone who spends a lot of time in his local LCS on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, because he likes to pick up his DC books bright and early. I decided to say, hey, would you be interested in doing just a small segment show, 3 to 5 minutes, where we just spotlight one book each? And he's like, yep, that's great, because he does a Saturday morning show where he talks about all the books he's going to be picking up, but it's hard for him just to spotlight one book. So this gave him the avenue just to decide, say, well, if you want to find out what the book I'm looking forward to the most is, check out, the Comic Vet tomorrow on Sunday, and where myself and him just spotlight one specific book for any given reason, whether it's a story, an issue number one, a special cover, a variant, whatever it may be. And it's been, there's been times where I kind of thought, I wonder if he's getting tired of this, because it's like he's been kind enough to donate a little bit of his time to record and actually email to me, and then I put it together and host it on my channel. But he continuously does it week after week after week after week, no questions asked. Sometimes they'll come across and say, I know this is more in your wheelhouse, but I'm kind of thinking of making it your pick. What do you think? And I'm like, oh, of course, man. Like, you're the one you're the one that donates your time to my channel. So I always try to give him first opportunity on whatever book. There's only been a handful of times where we're both kind of thinking the same thing. But I, generally speaking, I always have a 1B kind of book in mind, or a cover, so be it. And so yeah, that's how Mark and I just kind of collectively came together and do what we do. Like, now, with that being said, there's only ever been one time where Mark was unable to record for Two Cool Guys Swap Picks, and that was actually a couple Sundays ago, where he was actually near death with illness. And he was so sick that not only was not able to record his segment for my show, he wasn't able to go live on his own channel for his flagship show Sunday night at Week's End. So I knew that, it wasn't just something personal, like, hey, Chris, whatever, but he was just down and out. And I remember he reached out to me and he was just so apologetic. And I'm like, dude, like, you focus on you. Like, well, we can get through this, just as long as you want to keep the train rolling. Like, it's all good. And thankfully, Jimmy from Small Town Collectibles was able to step in, and he made a pretty cool pick, I got to be honest, at the last moment on Mark's behalf. So again, that just shows the resilience of our wonderful community, that when someone's not able to do something, all we have to do is ask. And I don't even want to say 9 times out of 10, because it's generally 10 times out of 10, someone always steps up to help out, because it's just a wonderful thing that we collectively share.
Yeah, because we grow as a community, just like hashtag
Absolutely.
Grow Together,
Yep.
coined by Gary V, the
casual comic guy.
Station to him. And I'm so glad that you ended up eventually going on Legion's show, because that's how I met you. Like, that's how
That's right.
I found you, and then it just went from there. Like, and like, that's how a lot of people have found other people's channels, like Comics with Bueller, and then like shouted out like Rock and Robbie. I found Rock and Robbie. I found Bullseye Bob, and it just kind of trickled from there. Like, and it's just great, because we only shout out people that we love, but we love everybody in this community, so we just shout out everybody.
That's true.
In a way. And it's just amazing in that. But moving on, you did mention like some of the movies that you loved growing up and some of the cartoons growing up. I want to touch on like some of the 80s cartoons that you like. I'm not sure, like, you were probably around 10 at that time. And so what kind of 80s cartoons did you grow up with?
Above and beyond everything that's not, say, Spider-Man related, would probably be Transformers. I fell in love with the Generation 1 Transformers show, and that in turn, because I remember it would be on an American network that I would get to watch Transformers out of Buffalo, New York, into Toronto, where I grew up. and I was watching. The channel was Buffalo 29. It's now a Fox station, but back then it was just an independent. And in the afternoons, starting at 3 o'clock till 6 o'clock, they would show basically Saturday morning cartoons, but it would be every day, and that blew my mind. So I would run home from school every day, and at 4 o'clock, I remember I would generally get home about quarter to four, 10 to 4, and at 4 o'clock, Transformers started. And at 4:30 was GI Joe, and that was a great hour of my life. I got to be honest. And those two cartoons were some of the best memories I had for Saturday morning type of cartoons, and that in turn led to Thundercats. And then when Thundercats was canceled, I can remember Silverhawks being there, and I believe that was only for a season or two. But it was those cartoons that I really enjoyed, and some of the Saturday morning stuff that was early '80s, late '70s, some of the Hanna Barbera stuff, Brave Star, and I remember, and He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, and I remember when the spin-off She-Ra came around, that like I would secretly watch She-Ra and not tell all my friends at school, until one day one of my friends let it slip out, oh yeah, I watch She-Ra. And then we're all collectively like, we watch She-Ra too. And then that would be a big conversation, because we would only talk about He-Man. And then once we collectively all let it be known that we watch She-Ra, we would talk about She-Ra too. But yeah, it would, for me, Transformers, Optimus Prime is still my favorite character. And I can remember that I remember talking to my dad about Transformers, and I remember recording it on the VCR and playing it for him when he came home from work, because he would come home after 6 o'clock, and he watched it, and he had this little puzzled look on his face, like what are you into here? And later that week, when payday rolled around, I got up Saturday morning, and sitting on the coffee table was my first Transformer toy that he ever bought me. So yeah, it was just a lot of those cartoons have a lot of good memories that tied to them, that brings back a lot of good family memories as well. And my first Transformer was Ratchet, who was the ambulance at the time. He's since been a few different he transformed into a few different vehicles, but originally he was the ambulance. So yeah.
Do you still have one?
I do not. I do not. I've looked at a few Generation One complete boxes of Ratchet, and I just kind of like, $300 for a Ratchet, or $300 for an ASM 31. What am I going to pull the trigger on? But I will eventually get Ratchet back. But yeah, I can remember my first Transformer was Ratchet, and sadly, no, I don't have them.
So what was your thoughts on the Transformers cartoon movie, like the animated movie, not the Michael Bay ones? We'll get to those.
Yep. So when they came out, that's another good story actually. I remember going to a theater called the Skyline, and the Skyline Theater was in the base of a hotel in Western Toronto, and it was a Saturday afternoon. My dad took me, of course, because my mom didn't have the stomach to sit through cartoon movies. So my dad and I went, and we sat down together. It was a matinee, and he got me a big bucket of popcorn, and I can remember him sitting down beside me, and he kind of put his arm across, my leg, just to, make sure I felt safe or whatever. And his arm stayed there for about an hour and a half, because he passed out for the entire movie. It was a nice Saturday afternoon nap for my dad. But I remember I remember hearing the rumors that they killed Optimus Prime off. I remember thinking, there's no way that's going to happen. But in the first 10 minutes of that movie, they wipe out most of the Gen 1 Autobots, including the first Autobot that I ever got, Ratchet. And I remember Megatron going on this killing spree with Starscream and a few other Decepticons, wiping out, this future-based timeline. And then Prime eventually showing up, and then Prime going on this killing spree of Decepticons, to the point where he meets up with Megatron, and they both, blast each other basically into annihilation. And I remember Megatron eventually almost being dead, and then coming across Unicron. But the part that I remember the most is getting choked up when Optimus Prime actually died, and then he had his color change from red to gray right there on the table. Just to drive home the point, this is real. And at towards the end of the movie, Ultra Magnus is set up to become the new Prime, but it's Hot Rod that becomes the Prime. And I remember thinking, okay, maybe Hot Rod's going to take this and give it to Optimus, and Optimus will come back to life. That never happened, at least not in the movie. So I loved the movie for what it was, and I'm not one of those guys that'll pick it apart or whatever. But it was tough watching Optimus Prime die. I got to be honest, and still to this day, I don't really like talking about it that much.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was.
Sorry for bringing it up.
It was no, but yeah, it was. It was just for me one of those moments that I just won't forget because my dad passed away about 12 years ago, and it was just one of those few great moments as a young boy that it was just him and I, even though he passed out, fell asleep. It was just him kind of, okay, I'll do this with you. I have no interest in this whatsoever, but I know it's something for you. And then afterwards, like we went to Harvey's and had a burger across the street. But yeah, it was it was just a lot of those movies. It was something that him and I did a lot. And so a lot of it, when certain movies that him and I saw, when I see them on TV or somehow if they get brought up in conversation, instantly I have that Ratatouille moment, whoosh, and I'm brought back to that point in my life as a young kid. But yeah, Transformers the movie, the original one, the cartoon, fantastic. Even though they didn't have to kill Prime.
As a kid, like you're probably looking at that like in a way that was like the first death for a lot of kids.
Yeah, because in the Star Wars trilogy, I believe, had just played out, and the central characters, no one died. It was just Darth Vader and the Emperor at the time died, and the Superman movies had basically were just playing out and starting to go a little downhill. We never lost Superman, and Batman had yet to show up on the big screen. I believe that was 1989, and Transformers was probably 85, 86 around that point. So yeah, Optimus Prime may, for me, outside of like a Disney movie, been the first character that I thoroughly enjoyed that was killed off, and so yeah, it was. But they brought him back, so it's all good.
So moving from a good Transformers movie to
Yep.
Michael Bay's Transformers movie, I know there's a lot of my friends, I don't want to say names, that truly hate and despise the Michael Bay Transformers movies.
Mm-hmm.
They can deal with the first one, but it's 2 and 3 that just go downhill after that.
Right.
What is your opinion on being a G1 fan? What is your opinion on those movies?
The one thing I like to talk about when it comes to the Bay Transformer movies is a lot of people don't realize how much Spielberg had his hand in those movies, especially the first one, where Spielberg kept saying to the scriptwriters and to Michael Bay, keep it about a boy in his car, a boy in his car, a boy in his car, a boy in his car. So that's why the thing that to me that was lost on it was the central character was Bumblebee the entire way. And to me, Bumblebee was always just that B or C character in the original Gen 1 cartoon show. It was always, like, to me, Optimus was clearly, the focal character, and then it was more like Ironside or Rawhide that were more of the B characters. So the fact that they picked Bumblebee, again, it was kind of cutesy or whatever, and then they messed them up, like not being able to talk and that. Whereas Bumblebee to me in the cartoons was actually a fantastic communicator. Again, the whole casting, I don't know if looking back if they made the right picks. Like even with Megan Fox, yeah, she takes a pretty picture, but could they have picked someone a little bit, with a little bit more acting experience? It is what it is. Like they're popcorn movies. They're when you deal with a movie that has such a hardcore following, almost like a cult following, you're not going to be able to please the masses when it comes to those that are, members of the cult that love the entity so much. And that's like, I'm very hypocritical of the Spider-Man movies. I shouldn't say hypocritical. I'm very critical of the Spider-Man movies just because he's been a part of my life the whole way. So I've dealt with different writers, different takes on Peter Parker. But the Transformer movies, that's a tough call, man. Would I ever go out and buy one of their DVDs or Blu-rays? Hell no. But do I appreciate what they are for special effects? Hell yeah. They're fantastic to look at. Is the story weak? Hell yeah. But did they do well by getting the original voice of Optimus Prime? Hell yeah. Like, it is what it is. To me, they could have done many things differently, like the whole idea of Megatron being a jet and the Decepticons being the way that they are and not using more Gen 1 and the whole Dinobots fiasco with I just don't like Shia LaBeouf, man. So it's hard for me to say something positive. But again, like I said, I know Spielberg had way more of a hand in it than what people realize. And I'm very, very like down the middle when it comes to Spielberg. I think Spielberg is a great director, but when it comes to franchises, I think that's where he kind of fumbles at times, for lack of a better term. And I think that he had his hand in the Transformers mess more than what people realize. And Michael Bay is the one that seems to be, catching the brunt of all the blame. But he was the director, so he was just playing with Spielberg's money in the end.
So
what did you think of them?
I didn't mind the first one. I didn't.
Yep.
You're right. The visual is what like kept me watching it because it was like visually great, but like that's all it was. Like you could play it in mute and just watch it,
right?
And because like there was no real drive to that movie at all.
Mm-hmm.
But the first one I think got me hooked on it. That's what did it for me because like the story was all right in the first one, and being a kid of the 90s and that and growing up with Shia LaBeouf from like Even Stevens and then seeing him in Holes and stuff. So it was nice to see like a person that I've grew up with and I knew kind of like on the screen.
Yep.
So, that's why I got hooked on it the first time. But I do agree. And I was young. Megan Fox was hot.
Oh, I'm not saying she wasn't. I'm just saying it would. I think personally, I think they could have got someone with a little bit more acting experience instead of someone who just takes a pretty picture.
Yeah.
There's only so many slow-mo roles we can do in Megan Fox before it gets a little tiresome with with Transformers.
And I don't agree with the whole last movie either, because meaning that Transformers have been around on that world for like ever in a way. And like that's not the case. Like they're from Cybertron. Like they're making it too much that Transformers originated from Earth in a way. And it kind of like threw me off. I was like, that's not how it is. Like, why are we trying to make this a thing?
Yeah, they're kind of jumping the shark at this point. They shouldn't be afraid to do a soft reboot or just go straight at it and just do a hard reboot. I like the Bumblebee solo movie. I thought was good fun. I'll be honest. Like it's nothing. There was nothing to tie that story to, like i.e. with a comic book or the original cartoon. So they just kind of had a field day with it, and I thought it was fun for what it was worth. Like, will it stand the test of time? Probably not. But was it fun to watch? Hell yeah. I thought Cena was good in it. What's the young lady's name? Haley Stanfield? Yeah. I thought she was good in it too. But yeah.
Did Spielberg have his hand in that one too? Because it's
I'm
same
sure,
thing. A girl in a car.
I'm sure he has a production credit on it somewhere there. Yeah.
It's not a boy in his car, but it's a girl in the car. So
so that's except to take away all the other Transformers or the remainder of the big name Transformers at least. But yeah.
And they're coming out with the new one, Transformers: Rise of the Beasts, which plays on my Transformers that I grew up with, Beast Wars. Have you
Yep.
ever gotten into that?
I watched a little bit of Beast Wars with my son. So my son was into Beast Wars. I would put it on for him, and that would kind of be like my quiet time coming down from work. So often I would have that, afternoon or evening nap while he was being entertained for half an hour. Because I remember at the time, Beast Wars was kind of cutting edge animation. Like first time we were getting I shouldn't say the first time, but it was one of the first cartoons that was fully computer generated, right? And I could relate to him a little bit, talking to him about the Transformers I grew up with. But the one thing that separated my son from myself when it came to Transformers was he would watch Beast Wars and be done with it. Like he would have no interest in getting those toys or collect or doing something uh, other than just watching the show. He was more into different stuff at the time. So it didn't capture my imagination the way that the Generation 1 cartoon did.
Hmm.
But yeah, I am familiar with it, and I have caught a little bit of the new Netflix stuff where they're now having the new or all the generations kind of amalgamate. But yeah,
Yeah, they did a terrible job with Megatron's voice for the T-Rex, but
yes.
I could deal with it. It was all right as long as they didn't ruin Dinobot for me. I was fine.
Yeah.
Um, but like also Beast Wars, done by Canada. So
Hmm.
shout out
It's a
Canada.
Nelvana, isn't it? I think it was a Nelvana show, but yeah. Hmm.
And um, all, did you another one that did it was Canadian that I loved, and I actually love this show more than Beast Wars. It struck home for me. Reboot.
Reboot, yes. So I know even less about Reboot, but I do know it was on YTV here in Canada. And again, my son would watch it, and I believe there was like some points where Reboot would be on first, and then Beast Wars would come on immediately after, or at least here in Ontario it was. And so whenever there was something not on TV, or if my son wanted to watch TV, he'd flick it to YTV all the time. And generally speaking, Reboot was about to start because I think that was about 7 o'clock. It would come on normally here, so he'd watch Reboot, and then Beast Wars would come on after, and I would just be kind of half paying attention to what was on. But yeah, I remember Reboot being, I think it was the first cartoon that was fully computer generated, or if I'm wrong, please correct me. But yeah, I remember watching it and like, oh, that's pretty cool. That kid's got green hair and stuff like that, stuff like that. But yes, I do know that Reboot still, resonates with a lot of people today. Like going to cons and stuff, I still see people wearing Reboot T-shirts or characters from that show. So I know that it was wildly, wildly popular, and
Oh,
still, uh, people like yourself who grew up with it still hold on to it.
yeah, it was different. Like computer generated, of course. Like that's
Hmm.
where I think Beast Wars got the idea. Like, oh,
Hmm.
they're doing great work over there. Let's because they're both done by the same company. Um, and it just worked really, really well for Reboot, considering what it was. It was like they were pretty much sprites inside of a computer system, like that played games. And whenever the mainframe would come down and like incoming
Yes.
game, and like
Yes.
they'd try to go in there, and like you'd see like reminiscence of like different games throughout your childhood show up in that. There was an
Yes.
Evil Dead episode.
Yes.
And
It's
I
all
was
now that
like,
you're saying that, it's coming back to me. Yes. Yeah. It was wildly original. Yes.
yeah, I just loved it every bit of the way. And like the only person I know in this community that has watched it and like has loved it as much as I do is Manny from Tomorrow Cinema.
Yes. Man, he's a good dude. Mhm.
So, but it's good to hear that you've enjoyed it as well, and that I love talking about cartoons that came from Canada because like they made some good cartoons and like
A
not a lot of people
lot.
know about them. Like a lot of people don't know about Reboot, and I think a lot
Right.
of people would enjoy it.
Hmm.
Go back
And I
and watch
believe
it.
even the old classic Astro Boy uh, has a connection to Quebec too. That some of the animation was done in Quebec as well for Astro Boy, and Astro Boy's been around since the '60s. And but yeah, a lot of people don't realize Nelvana had their hand in so many Saturday morning cartoons, and they were done in Montreal, Toronto, St. Catharines, all across, Quebec and Ontario. And they were just,
I always used to see Ontario.
yeah. But yeah, it's a little bit of Canadian history there.
Yeah, and like I just had a sit down with Peter Bro, and come to find out, like we have like a lot of Canadian like talent, especially here in the Maritimes. Like Ed Brisson's here. We have one of the writers for Rick and Morty comic living here in PEI, I guess. So I just found
Really?
that out. So
Hmm.
I'm gonna get my first restraining order. No, I'm just kidding.
That's pretty good. But yeah, very
But
good.
we have a lot of talent coming out of Canada, like actual Dracula, yourself, soon me. I don't know, but it's great to hear that.
The Mount Rushmore of Canadian YouTube comic, the comic side, right?
Yeah.
And yes, I do realize I just threw myself at an American monument. But anyways, but yeah,
So
that's the one thing that I like to talk about often when I go on shows that are hosted by our friends to the south. Let's be honest, if it wasn't for the American pulp culture, we wouldn't be talking today. Like I realize that it's all just having good fun. Like it's just little brother syndrome. We'll be honest, but Sunday nights when I go live on Legion of Comics, we'll be talking about a book or whatever, and then I'll just happen to throw in there. Yeah, and I read this book by Canadian Chip Zdarsky, and then they'll have a little bit of a field day, kind of stuff. But then like, oh, and this Batman comic book drawn by Canadian Jason Faylock. you know, it's just again, it's just good fun, just trying to promote, that little Canadian, that Canadian little brother syndrome that we have when we compare ourselves to the United States. To our American brethren that are watching this, like we realize again, without the American ingenuity, this probably wouldn't exist anyway. The whole idea of a comic book, even though Siegel and Schuster, or one of them was Canadian, and the whole idea of Metropolis is based off Toronto originally. For those that didn't know that, it's true, and but yeah, it's there's nothing wrong with saying that if there's a fellow countryman that's doing well that you want to talk about it. Same thing with the British or the Australians. It's the same thing.
yeah, and America is our neighbors.
Yes.
Even though I do not understand why we have to pay an import fee. I don't understand that because like I have people that get stuff from Japan and don't have to pay an import fee. And we're considered North America. Why aren't we like
If you want to get political, man, I'll love to get political. But yeah, it is strange, that yeah, we blame NAFTA all we want on that. So much for free trade, right? It doesn't really exist unless you're, big business. But yeah, it's funny how that works. Like, because I purchase stuff off eBay, and there's been, I've won contests off, YouTube, and these people have been always kind enough to ship to Canada. And it's weird that they have to pay an arm and a leg to send something that's basically, like a parallel or two north of where they are. And when it comes across the border, I in turn have to pay tax on that just in order to pick it up. And it is bizarre how it works. So that's why I stress to all my American friends, I can't wait for that border to open up, because I have a U.S. postal box just on the other side of the Ontario-New York border, and I got so much stuff waiting for me, and I can't wait to get it and smuggle it back into Canada. And yeah, it's weird that you're right. That like there's stuff that we can purchase from around the world, and other than paying, heavier shipping costs, when it arrives in Canada, we don't have to pay a duty tax on it. But anything that we receive from the United States, majority of the time, we have to pay duty on.
is that the other way around too? Like if I send something to America, do they have to pay?
Not that I know of.
Oh.
Not that I know of.
Oh,
Hmm.
that just makes me hurt a little bit more.
Yes, yes. Like I said, if you want to get political, however you voted the last election, vote differently. Maybe they'll change it.
Ouch.
But
That
yeah,
sucks.
it does suck.
All right. Well, let's step aside from the political side because let's
Sure.
move to something a little bit better. You talked about Transformers toys, owning a Ratchet toy, your first
Yep.
Transformers toy.
hmm
So, do you pick up Transformers toys now, or any figures at all?
I pick up Spider-Man stuff here and there if it catches my eye. When my son was younger, I picked up a few Transformers for him, and he played with it a little bit, but he was more into just the normal action figure type of toy. Um, you know, maybe it's because Beast Wars wasn't his favorite cartoon growing up, but stuff that stuff that he was into was more stuff that he really desired. He was, and not to say that I wouldn't pass up on a Gen 1 Optimus Prime and original box for the right price, but I know what they're worth. And, I don't necessarily have $700 or $800 just lying around to 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 pick up for a nostalgia factor, even though I would love to, trust me. But to answer your question, I haven't picked up a Transformer toy in a very long time. Does that mean that if I were to go to, say, Fan Expo, the big con here in Toronto, if they were to have an exclusive Optimus Prime toy or a Transformer toy that was, a reasonably priced, would I pick it up? Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the collector in me, the nostalgic collector in me that would pull the trigger on it. I don't go out hunting for those toys right now, but like I often catch the hype when stuff comes out too. And if there was something that I thought was very, very cool, I would probably hop on that train and pick it up too.
Transformers toys right now too are pretty expensive. Like,
Yeah, they've always been expensive. Even when I was a kid, at that point, they were expensive then too.
and it doesn't help that like a $50 US is like almost like $70 for us.
Right. Yeah, that's again, if you want to get political, my man, I'm more than willing if you want to talk politics. But yeah, it is tough. Sometimes the Canadian dollar seems to be on the rebound versus the American greenback, and that's when I try to pull the trigger as much as I can on stuff that I've just been kind of sitting in the bush on, and then feels like just a couple days later, Canadian dollar's gone right back down because something's happened in the world, when it comes to Canada. So yeah, hashtag blame Canada for sure at that point.
You heard it now, guys. Hashtag blame. Just reminds me of South Park. Blame
Yeah,
Canada.
that's right.
Well, we're coming near to the end before we get into what you're picking up now, because we start with comics and we end with comics.
Yes.
Everything nerdy in between. But before we get into that, I just want to plug what's coming up next after on this Whiplash Wednesday. As I said earlier, it started on the hashtag Blame Fable show, where we always show off Complete Fire Comics. Well, he does. And that's over on Instagram, one collection down. That leads us to here. After this, you want to go check out Nick Comic Culture's video, and he's probably doing a haul from his Cadets Toys and Comics. That's his local comic book store, so you're going to want to check that out. Then after that, Big Herm Collectibles and Sam from Sam's Tangled Web chop it up about Marvel characters, Image characters, DC characters. Who knows? Tune in and find out. Then ending the night in fashion, and I'm going to say this in fashion because this is What Are You Making edition of the Tomorrow Show, and he has Bradley Golden, CEO and writer of These Damn Kids of Second Sight Publishing, Marvin Wynn, and Brandon Ingram. We may have some more guests coming, but tune in to find out. And that show is always hosted by me and Tomorrow Cinema. So guys, thank you for tuning in. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and ding, ding, ding that notification bell for future videos. And I just want to say before we get into the comics, thank you so much, Chris, for stopping and doing this show with me. I really do appreciate it.
It was my pleasure, man. It was my pleasure. I'm sorry I couldn't do this earlier, but like if you ever want to do a sequel, just reach out, man. I'd love to sit down and talk with you again at any
Man.
time.
So let's get into it. What are you picking up now? Like, what are you loving that you urge everybody to read?
Let's see. There's so many. Well, today, New Comic Book Day, sadly, Spider's Shadow is coming to an end, and this is a book that I feel, even though it's under the What If banner by Canadian Chip Zdarsky, uh, I feel it's been the best Spider-Man story that we've had in ages, and it actually pains me to say because generally speaking, Spider-Man always has fantastic stories. Rarely do we have, uh, a sequence of so many titles under the Spider-Man banner where they're just not good. Right now, like I said, it's kind of weird that it's a what if banner that is presenting the best Spider-Man story in my opinion. And today it comes to conclusion with issue number 5 of Spider Shadow. Basically, it's just a what if take on if Peter decided to hold on to the Venom symbiote and not give it up. So I'm looking forward to see what Chip does with this one. Like everyone else, something is killing the children is always at the forefront of my mind. I know right up to issue 15 was just fantastic. I know right now with telling Erica's origin story, a lot of people are, kind of downplaying how good how good the story actually is. I'm thinking it's still fine. Like even though the majority of the story we know how it turns out, I just find it fascinating to watch it play out. So something is killing the children is something that's in the forefront of my mind. Uh, another story that caught me right off issue number 1 was Beyond the Breach from Aftershock. I'm looking forward to issue 2. I don't know why, but I'm really enjoying stories where we have not necessarily a female lead, but a lead where they're not being over sexualized or someone that's just jacked up on super steroids kind of thing. Like, sorry about that. And
I was like, what's going on?
no, and so Beyond the Breach, something is killing the children. These are female leads that are not, scantily dressed, and they seem to be strong characters, going through some sort of turmoil in their own personal life while this incredible phenomenon is happening around them.
Hmm.
So those 2 books I think everyone should be reading. And Beyond the Breach, even though it's on a smaller publisher, if you can get your hands on it, even for spec value, I think there is some spec value there. Is a terrific read. Nice House on the Lake by Tynan again. It's very very good, very interesting. I know it's caught the eye of many people. I know issue number 1 has gone up in value, and I believe we're only on issue 4 now. And 4 or 3.
I think 3.
3, pardon me. So issue 3 came out last week, and I know issue 1's already basically a $30 book raw, and that's fascinating. And but again, the story is there. Uh, I've been enjoying Berserker for what it's worth. It's just good, you know, sloppy action fun. And I know that Keanu Reeves is attached to it, but even if he wasn't, I would think the same thing. This is just kind of, just knockout, old school, sloppy kind of silly writing that's just fun to read. I know what Todd is doing with Spawn right now is very interesting and very good as well. I'm not saying that because, Todd is Canadian, but it's really good. And the fact that he's starting to put together a universe is just fantastic on top of it. It's just the icing on the cake.
And
Um,
I'm just gonna say this too, like, and he's like card stock now for covers,
yes,
better paper quality at $2.99. Plus the upcoming series like King Spawn and Gunslinger Spawn. The first issue will be overpriced because it's oversized, but those
yeah,
issues afterwards are back down to $2.99 USD.
that's right. and he hasn't changed it since day one. So good for him. Rom v Swamp Thing. It's a 12-issue limited series. It is
Is it 12?
spectacular. Yeah,
I heard.
it
I thought it was
yeah, maybe
10.
it's 12. Oh, it's 10? Okay. Either way, it is spectacular. That is just some great writing. Dealing with a guy that just doesn't seem to be a very likable person. And that's it and that's another thing that I'm kind of been drawn to when it comes to, modern type of comic book reading is I like the guy that he's not like the anti-hero, kind of like how Wolverine or the Punisher is, but just a guy who's just not likable. And the same thing with the Department of Truth, the main character Cole. I just don't find he's a likable person, but it's still a fascinating story to watch unfold. And the Department of Truth and Swamp Thing, not that they're anything alike, it's just those type of characters within some fantastic writing that seems to be going along. I have a lot of guilty pleasure reads that I read. Firepower, Wonder Woman, Captain America. Even though that's come to an end, it's probably going to get another reboot. Those are just guilty pleasure books that I just read just because I enjoyed them, from my teen years. And yeah, so those are, I usually pick up somewhere between 5 and say 15 books every new comic book day, depending on what type of week it is. And yeah, but something is killing the children. When this particular arc is over, I hope everyone gets right back on that train again if they're not enjoying it, because we're going to get those monsters back. There's going to be some kid out there in the United States that thinks of a monster, and it's just going to go haywire again the way that it did through the first 15 issues. So what are you
So
reading right now? I
you're
know
saying
you
something.
read a little bit more indie than I do.
What do I like? You forgot one of Ram V's best works right now. Many Desolate Star.
Right.
Loving that series. Um, I I actually am a big into DC as well. Like I've been reading Suicide Squad. I
Yep,
have been reading Swamp Thing, Wonder Girl.
I would say Suicide Squad is the backbone of DC's universe right now. Almost everything seems to be happening in and around that franchise right now. And I don't know if it's because the film is coming out or just came out or whatnot, but yeah, that's the Suicide Squad is just so good. And I like how it tied into Teen Titans Academy, and Batman's a part of it as well, like keeps getting tied in. But yeah,
I
to
dropped
each their
Teen
own.
Titans Academy. I gave
Did
it
ya?
that one try when we talked about it,
Yeah.
and then I was just like, no, I can't. I can't. I did not enjoy it. But Batman, the main Batman run, I have been picking up
Yep.
the Batman Second Son, and then I
Hmm.
pre-ordered I Am Batman number 0 because I really actually enjoyed it. Not a lot of people enjoyed Batman Second Sons, but I did, and I know Big Herm did as well.
Yep.
What else am I picking up? Marjorie Finnegan, Temporal Criminal. I've been enjoying that series a lot. Am I still here?
Yep. I'm here. I'm here.
But
Uh,
that's about it. But I think we'll wrap things up in that. We're at the hour mark, so I just want to say stay tuned and thank you again for doing this. It's been
my
a
pleasure.
pleasure.
My pleasure as always. And I'm glad I'm sorry that we didn't do
So
it
just
sooner,
so
but I thoroughly enjoy this. Sorry.
we'll do other shows together. I want to get you in some other shows, like on the Tomorrow Show as well. Join us over there. We're always welcome, and especially the hashtag Blame Fable Show on Instagram. We'd love to have you on there sometime. Maybe if you're on
Absolutely.
at your shop or
Yep.
just picked up your new comic books and that, it'd be amazing.
Yep.
And guys, just so you know, the links to Chris, the Comic Vets channel, is down below. So go sub him up, go show him some love, and give him a hearty station.
Appreciate it, my man.
Guys, make sure to like and subscribe. Make sure to go check out Nick Comic Culture, who's coming up next on this Whiplash Wednesday and New Comic Book Day. And as always, stay nerdy, my friends.